Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Lenley Hensarling, who is the Chief Strategy Officer from Aerospike. Hello, Lenley. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Jessica.
I'm excited to learn more about your company. You're in this real-time data analytics business. You've been around, actually, and you're doing a great job with some of the big, like financial services, right? The banks of the world. And I'm interested in like the retail space because I think that's very fascinating for that recommendation of consumer shopping.
Sure. So Aerospike, as you mentioned, has been around for a while. And what's been happening is there was a big move in ad tech, which was all real time. So offering up ads in digital space, buying of ads. A company that we have that's done really well, the Trade Desk, processes, just millions and millions of these bidding sessions between the people who have the ad space and the people who are trying to buy it. And now it's informed with information, and not informed with general information, informed with information in real time. So user profiles that show exactly what's going on with that person that they can pattern match against, but also huge amounts of big data that they can process and run models against and decide whether to bid on that ad. And so that style, that real-time processing and the processing of data from multiple channels has now extended into, fraud detection. So PayPal's a big customer, as is Threat Metrics, right? And a lot of the commercial banks that you talked about are using our database to process, millions and millions of data points and then extract those. One of our customers said, we're the difference between being able to take, 10 or 20 data points, match it against 2 weeks of data, and take 1,000 data points and match it against, 2 months of data. And that has real world repercussions. In the fraud space, everybody thinks like you want to prevent fraud from happening. You also want to prevent false positives.
Yes.
So these people have actually lowered the false positives by like 30, 40%. And so every time there's a false positive, somebody lost a transaction in a store.
That's right.
And you talk about all that money, that's where the real
and the customer getting
is.
Frustrated. Like
That's
they can't
right.
use their credit
There's
card.
a huge component of customer sat to that,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that type of ability to process data that fast is really something that's happening at a greater pace. And people are seeing that pattern, and they're going in and doing it in more and more places. So they see what's done in fraud. They see what's done in the ad tech space. That people in IoT are really doing the same type of thing. They're creating profiles of equipment, right? They're matching it against patterns. They're pulling data from not just that machine, but the experience with all the machines and weather and other things, and doing all of that in real time.
So it's not just the fact that there's just more data because of more devices collecting data, but there is a competitiveness to being as real-time as possible in having the insights to make real-time decisions.
That's exactly right. And there's a quality of decision too. The point is that, instead of just, I can process something in real time, it's like, how much can you process? How well informed is that algorithm, right? It's like data quality, data, and algos.
And also total cost of ownership.
And total cost of ownership. So we were with a customer set this week, and one of them brought up that their business wouldn't exist if they didn't have the cost profile of handling these massive amount of data that Aerospike provides them. That they just would never have gotten to profitability because it's a small margin, super high volume game, right?
Yes, yes.
And they've been able to be profitable from the start, almost. And I think they said they have, $300 or $500 million of business against, $100 million in IT cost. And so there's margin there, right? Where before, when they were modeling this out, they were looking and saying, well, what year would we ever get to profitability?
Right. So it's a real competitive advantage if they're leveraging your technology to be able to do a lot more real-time decision-making at a lower total cost of ownership.
That's right. And the lower the cost of ownership, that also means that they can, buy more data. they can process
That's
more
right.
data. It's
More
like
money to invest in
more
other
money
things.
to invest in,
Yes.
and we like to say more money to invest in innovation, right?
Yes, yes, in growth. And I think it's interesting how, like, nowadays that next day delivery has become the standard expectations. And so it pushes
is.
everybody else to try to optimize that supply chain to have materials delivered the next day, right? And your ability to help them come up with data in real time, make decision is actually a huge advantage.
That's right, and you know that's a great example, Jessica. You know, one I hadn't thought about, but you know the big surprise is when you order something, you know, at 11 o'clock, and it shows up at 4, right? Same day delivery, and you think, what did they have to do to know where that is, what trucks were out, what truck was going to come in, where it was going to go, and you know be able to execute that cleanly. And so that's all data driven, and the world's just becoming, you know, a complete data-driven world. You know, what a customer said to us this week was that, and we actually had a session with customers, and we said, how should we describe ourselves? And they basically said, you know, handling massive amounts of real-time data at scale, always on.
Yes.
Always on, because every time, you know, you're not on, that's a big problem. It's lost revenue because it's not like the person's captured in the store. You know, if a site gets slow even, we'll move on to the next one.
That's right. That's right. I want to ask about your role as the Chief Strategy Officer. So what are some of the changes that, or the strategy thinking in terms of shifting into new areas like the enterprise market for your company?
Sure. You know, we've been doing well in ad tech and in fraud and some of these things, what I call digital native, you know, applications, right? These are people that formed internet companies. They're super tech savvy, and that's what they're focused on. But there's a whole revolution going on. You hear about digital transformation. And so almost every company sees themselves as competing with Amazon, if you will. You know, they call it the Amazonian, you know, threat. And people are having to say, how do I do that? It's a little more complicated in a big enterprise. So I have a background in, you know, big company ERP and dealing with enterprises. And I came in and looked at it and saw how much value there was there. And we're starting to get more and more people from enterprises who are going through digital transformations. The first wave is really with, you know, financial services. I'm sure you do all your banking on your phone,
Yes.
right? Do you check your account during the day,
Yep.
you know? When you get a note that, like, somebody spent some money on the account, maybe it's your children, maybe it's your husband, you know, and you go, oh, look. And they go, is that okay? And you go, oh, I know that store. And all that's going on all the time. And if you don't compete at that level and provide that level of service,
I see.
it just doesn't work.
Right, right. Like when you just pay for the lunch bill, you get an alert on the phone that this amount was charged immediately.
Exactly,
So it's very,
exactly,
yes, yes.
exactly. All in real time. The other thing that's happening is, you know, there's a compression of risk too through handling more data in real time. You know, we have a couple customers in the financial services world that are processing, you know, a book of trades or a book of loans that are changing all the time. And that's happening in real time. And they used to, at night, get a reconciliation and they'd understand what their position was, and then they could look at the market and see what their exposures were.
Right, right.
Now they're doing that every 3 to 4 minutes.
Wow.
So the window of risk, if you will, went from, you know, 12, 14 hours to 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
And so now they can go, oh, do we want to trade for more of that or not? We have plenty of that on our books given the risk profiles we have and all these other models we're running behind it. But that type of thing is what really moves, you know, business forward and changes the game.
And what are the strategies? Is it different now that you're shifting into the enterprise and not just the ad tech space?
Yeah, so you know, content is everything in sales and marketing these days. And so how we're actually approaching, who we're targeting, how we're going after them, understanding the personas and how to, you know, peg those people through digital access, if you will, and what kind of content drives them. So you can make an assumption if you're selling to, you know, software companies in the Valley of a certain level of sophistication. And, you know, it'd be boring for them to hear you talk about, here's a different model for programming, key
Right.
value. Here's a different model for running the business. They say, we know that.
Right.
But when you get into the enterprise, they say, we want to digitally transform. We need to get closer to our customers. We get more in the moment of the customers. And then we can explain more about that. And so we're putting a lot more emphasis on content, and content for different groups, right? So it might be that line of business person
Right.
who's the marketing person.
Right.
I saw a talk recently that they call the marketing, there's a trend to name the chief marketing officer the chief growth officer, because it's really about revenue, right?
Yes.
But they're thinking at a certain level, and they need to understand what the options are. And then they get a bottom-up approach too from their developers.
Right.
And so we're marketing to those people too.
The technical person.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to ask you about some of the challenges that you face, and maybe the strategies you have in place, and maybe some of the lessons learned given your experience.
Yeah, so one thing, we've taken a little bit different path, and maybe a slower path, but we're right at the break-even point now. So as we look into the future, we'll be profitable and growing instead of just saying, give us more money, give us more money, give us more money. And we think that given the uncertainties in the economic climate, that's a value back to our customers.
Yes.
How do they know we'll be around?
That's right.
Because we're managing very prudently and moving forward. And we've also done something else. I mentioned that there's a cost of ownership issue, and we hadn't really sold this as well as we might have. We actually develop software to be incredibly stable. I mean, this is system software. It can't go down. If the fraud detection system goes down, well, that's a huge problem. So we have customers who've been running for 8 years with no downtime, on a cluster of data, just never gone down. And the effort we put into that to build quality into our software, it is a huge thing. The other thing that we do that's different, I think, that is a branding opportunity for us, is I mentioned we worked, with companies like Intel and stay up with the latest progress in the hardware. So, persistent memory, right? And nobody uses a spinning disk, and it was all about SSDs, and that's kind of what we're known for. But now we're supporting, persistent memory. We're supporting the latest, networking cards from Intel and working closely with them. And we don't just say, oh, we've tested that we run on it. We go down and take every advantage that the hardware people are putting in their innovations. And so you'll notice if you look at our website, right, that we're one of maybe 1 or 2 companies that are there with the latest capabilities in networking and storage as a database vendor that supports that.
Right.
And that's something that, our customers really value, because they're trying to do things in real time and trying to handle more data, because they're in a competitive game.
Yes.
If I can handle more data, if I can be faster, if I can have a model that's more accurate, right, and put the thing in front of the customer that's the thing they want, but that's all driven by these capabilities. And so we focus on, quality in terms of not having to ever mess with, bugs bringing the whole thing down and things like that. And then this tight integration with the hardware. And we're not only working with, the hardware vendors in that context, we're working at 3 ways with, like Google GCP and Intel and our customers and us, trying to say, can I have this in the cloud as well?
Yes. And you're constantly pushing for all of those metrics to get better, right? Faster, less expensive,
we are, but our
customers
even more so, because they're sitting there going, how, like, Wayfair is a great example of a customer of ours, okay? So they're growing like mad. They're the largest, online seller of furniture, home furnishings,
and they're always recommending things when you're shopping.
And they're always recommending when you're shopping in your email everywhere, right? And I go like, how did you know I was looking at rugs? And you have to think back. So they're really good at it. And a certain type. No, they nail it, okay? But they're competing with Amazon, right?
Yes.
And Amazon's got access to tons of data. So it's a game of like, can they get access to and can they process more and more data? It's interesting. They're a furniture, retail company by some definition, right? They're also the largest supplier, largest employer of software engineers in the Boston area.
Ah,
Think
I know
about that. In a high-tech area, they're
Yeah.
the largest. So they're very digital,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the things that they do are driven, on top of our database because they want to process all of that data more in real time.
All right, this is very interesting because yes, I do remember recommendation. When Netflix first started using that,
Yes,
recommending movies
yes.
for you, and now recommendation is everywhere, and you're helping to push the envelope on that front.
It is, because those are just models. And, again, if they can take more data in the profile of you, right, and then match that with more data from other people's profiles and do all of that while you're trying to make a choice. Because if they can figure it out after you've made your choice and you say, Netflix doesn't have anything, right, or Wayfair doesn't have the couch I want, right, that's the thing that they're in a competitive game, and it's about data and turning that into information faster than the next guy.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Lenley, for sharing about Aerospike and the innovation you're bringing to the marketplace.
Thanks, it's been great. It's been fun, Jessica. Thanks.
There you have it, folks. Take it up with Jessica Lee, Lenley, Hensarling from Aerospike.